Hey, welcome to another edition of the Gentleman Grachowski Show. I'm your host, Larry Grachowski, and this is a great show for you today where you're going to be excited about some of the things we're going to be talking about here. But here on the Gentleman Grachowski Show, we like to spotlight local talents and rising stars, local and nationwide. And we're going to have a great show for you today. We're going to have Richard Lertzman and Dr. William Burns on the show, and they're going to talk about their new book, the Dr. Feelgood Case Book. But first, let's talk about some funny things that hop up on the internet these days. And I think we're getting ready for our election this year. I saw this on the mailbox, and I guess that means election season is getting ready to in full swing. They're getting all the mailboxes. They're closing them up there. I don't know, but you know what? Proofreading would be really good to do these days, especially if you're doing a kid's book. Look at this. How many bananas do you see there, huh? I think some monkeys took care of this Facebook. Five bananas. It says there, number five, but only was it a couple more bananas there. Oops, somebody made a mistake. And you know what? If there was ever a face of any babies born in the year 2020, they would look exactly like this. These babies don't look happy, and you know what? They must be just the last couple of months of labor and all that going on there. Oh my gosh, that's how any baby born this year. And the fall dresses are coming in for bridal parties. Take a look at this. This is about sums it up there. This for the kind of year we've had there. I think it's a pepperoni pizza, but I don't know. It could be worse. Who knows? Like stuff like that. And yes, that's right. That's the new way we got to travel on the bus these days. I guess like that. But you know what? No one seems complaining too much about it. I want to. Crazy lady. And there's always a smart ass out here. Check out the guys at the Naval Academy, Observation Academy there, and he's a naval observation himself. He's checking out his belly button, his navel. And speaking of a smart ass, oh my goodness, look at that. It's a miracle. It's a miracle the blind can see. Oh my God. Bird's eye view, I guess, huh? That's kind of cool, huh? That's pretty interesting. And you know what? Yes, it happens. Words, look at this. Words to live by. No weatherman can get it wrong when he says it that way. Look at that. Wet streets. Oh my goodness. Woo, let it rain, let it rain. This is the Gentleman Grachowski Show. We're going to have a great show for you today. Again, as I said, Rick Lertzman and Dr. William Burns will be on the broadcast to talk about the book, the Dr. Feelgood Case Book. And as always, TVHams.com is the official website of the Gentleman Grachowski Show. Everything about the show you can find out there at the TVHams.com. We'll be back after this. Don't go away. Hey, welcome back to the Gentleman Grachowski Show. Check us out on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, believe it or not. And my next guest is Rick Lertzman and Dr. William Burns, and they're the authors of the new book, the Dr. Feelgood Case Book. The stories of Dr. Max Jacobson, named Dr. Feelgood by the Secret Service, who injected President Kennedy and Jackie O with drug cocktails of meth, steroids, monkey gonads, eel, and sheep sperm. Ugh. He was injecting JFK during the Cuban Missile Crisis. This doctor was kind of like a modern day Dr. Frankenstein, wouldn't you say, guys?
Well, that's the complex that he had. I mean, he fully believed, and this, call it a delusion, call it whatever you want to call it. He fully believed, and you see this in his writings, in magazine writings, in interviews that he gave, in testimony before the United States House of Representatives. He fully believed that he had the ability, he had the knowledge and the expertise to cure someone of any disease based on his treatment of their blood. That's what he believed.
Okay. And well, he definitely made people feel good for a while. I don't know what the long-term results were of that. But tell us about, who was Max Jacobson? How did he start off? He was initially from Germany, right?
He was a German doctor. He escaped the Holocaust. He was well known in Germany. He had trained a doctor named Theo Morell, who became Adolf Hitler's doctor. Came to America, became a very successful doctor on Lexington Avenue in New York, and started treating all the stars back in the 30s and 40s. He treated a lot of Broadway stars, and then he started treating a lot of writers like Tennessee Williams and Truman Capote, and eventually he got to everybody. He got to senators and writers like Rod Serling, and he became very profound in New York.
Now, Dr. Max Jacobson was codenamed Dr. Feelgood by the Secret Service, injected President Kennedy and Jackie O with drug cocktails of meth, steroids, monkey gonads, eels, and sheep sperm. He was injecting JFK during the Cuban Missile Crisis. What exactly did JFK need with all that concoction, and how did it really make him feel? And did it help with him governing the country?
Well, it's funny. That was just the reverse. I mean, it helped him win the presidency in 1960, that's for sure. JFK in 1960 was suffering from a fatal disease called Addison's disease. It was a disease of the endocrine system. And he likely would not have survived his second term in office just due to that disease. There was no cure for it in 1960. And it made him weak. It made his muscles weak. He was very prone to all kinds of sprains and things like that. But in addition to his Addison's disease, he had Crohn's disease, irritable bowel syndrome. He was taking all kinds of barbiturates just to relax his muscles. He was taking phenobarbital. He was taking things like that. He was in such pain from his back. Remember, he'd injured his back in World War II on PT-109, rescuing that crew. His back was so badly damaged that JFK needed 3 or 4 shots of Procaine, which is like Novocaine. The dentist gives you, this is much stronger, a day from his doctor, Janet Travell. So this guy was a really sick guy. In fall of 1960, JFK behind in the polls. Now, Nixon and JFK were friends and they were both senators. So he's behind in the polls, he's losing to Nixon, and they're going into their first debate. Kennedy lost his voice. How can you have a presidential debate if you're hoarse? I mean, you sound old. So what did he do? His friend, his former roommate from college, Chuck Spaulding, takes him to this doctor, Dr. Feelgood, that Spaulding used, and Max Jacobson mixed up, as Rick said, sheep gonads and eel cells and bull sperm and all kinds of things, because he believed that if you made the blood strong, that would make the person strong. So Kennedy walks in, Max Jacobson looks at him, doesn't even bother to diagnose the guy, draws a big syringe, gives him a shot right in the vocal cords, Kennedy's voice comes back. Kennedy's got bounce in his step. Kennedy says, "This is the best pick-me-up I ever had." Bounces out of the office. From that moment, Max Jacobson was Kennedy's ad hoc doctor. And the results for JFK were almost fatal. And the results for the United States, it almost got into a nuclear war twice.
Wow, unbelievable. We're sitting here with Rick Lertzman and Bill Burns, and I got the new book, the Dr. Feelgood Casebook. We'll be back with more of them after this. Don't go away. Hey, welcome back to the Gentleman Gruchowski Show. We're sitting here with the authors of the book, the Dr. Feelgood Casebook. We're Rick Lertzman and Bill Burns. How are you, gentlemen?
Hi, Larry.
Thank you.
Now, Hollywood was a big fan of Dr. Feelgood too, Max. Max was a big influencer in Hollywood too. Can you tell us about some of that?
Well, there were so many stars. I mean, literally, we have a list in our book of over 500 stars, and that includes Elizabeth Taylor, who was with her husband Eddie Fisher, and Marilyn Monroe was one of his major clients. And Marilyn Monroe was so drugged up one time when she sang "Happy Birthday, Mr. President" to JFK at his birthday party at Madison Square Garden. She had just gotten 40 milligrams of methamphetamine in her neck, and she came out slurring her words and singing "Happy Birthday, Mr. President." On the day of Marilyn's death, Max Jacobson's son, who was also a doctor, Tommy Jacobson, delivered milligrams of methamphetamine to Marilyn Monroe, which she self-injected the night that she died.
Ooh.
And so there was quite a bit of stars, and a lot of people who are still alive who were patients of Max Jacobson from Anthony Quinn to Cecil B. DeMille and Billy Wilder and directors and producers, and somebody in Hollywood depended on Max Jacobson's methamphetamine shots.
And in the book, you also mentioned that his office was from like 10 o'clock at night till 4 in the morning was packed, right?
Oh my God, people never left his office. When we were speaking to people, well, when we spoke to Eddie Fisher, to Alice Ghostly, to from Bewitched, her husband, Felice Orlandi, when we spoke to these people, one of the things that they were fascinated by, especially Dar Shapiro, who was the assistant to Alan J. Lerner writing Camelot and On a Clear Day and shows like that, one of the things they all said was that Max almost never left his office. And Eddie Fisher told us this incredible story of going to his office. Well, actually, it was Alan J. Lerner and Dar Shapiro who told this story. They went to Max's office very late. They were working on a song for On a Clear Day You Could Sing Forever. They were hitting a wall. You know, you're trying to write, you're blocked,
Right.
You can't get the right word, right? So they say, we need a shot. So they jump in, this is in New York, so they jump into a cab, they run across town, they're on the west side, they run through the park to the east side to Max's office. It's like 2 in the morning. Here's Max. He's over his lab table, and then as he's mixing syringes, he falls asleep. Then one of his patients tap him and say, Max, you got to wake up. He wakes up, finishes mixing his syringes, gives a shot, falls back to sleep again. He never slept. You may ask, how was he able to do that? How could a human being that age, Max was no spring chicken at this point, how could a human being at that age stay up that long? Speed. He was getting high on his own supply.
Oh,
He
goodness.
was drugging himself. That's what was happening. So of course the guy only slept 3-4 hours a day. He didn't have to. He was on speed. And in the end, that's what killed him.
Right. And at least he believed in this product. That's a good thing, right? always want to trust someone that believes in what they're selling. It also says one of his aides insisted that he wasn't in it for the money. He was in it for the power over people. The people have dependent on him, right?
He did. He was partners with Prince Stash Radswell, who was John Kennedy's brother-in-law, and they were partners. And Stash Radswell became very, very wealthy. They had a lab in Point Lookout, New York, which is near the Hamptons, and they would supply it. They were the French connection. The real French connection was Stash Radswell, and he was running it out of his big castle next to Buckingham Palace. And they ran a worldwide operation. Max never got rich. People like Stash Radswell became fabulously wealthy.
And they went to organized crime too, because when Alice Ghostly asked her husband, Felice Orlandi, what's going on with this guy? You guys are working till 3, 4, 5 in the morning. You're not getting it. What's going on? Stop it already, because you're. And Felice Orlandi said to his wife, look, I can't tell you who, but Max is into some very bad guys, and some very bad guys are running this operation. And so as a result, Max was really working for an organized crime cartel run by Stash Radswell.
Wow, the book is a Dr. Feelgood case book. Rick Lerchman and William Burns are the authors. We'll be back with one more segment with you guys after this, so don't go away. Hey, welcome back to the Gentleman Grachowski Show. TVHams.com is the official website of the Gentleman Grachowski Show. Everything about the show, TVHams.com. My guests are Rick Lerchman and Dr. William Burns, and they're the authors of the new book, the Dr. Feelgood Case Book. Max Jacobson had a relationship with Winston Churchill. Could you guys tell me a little bit about that?
Max was asked by Winston Churchill's doctor to treat him, and which he did. Max was also asked by Pope Pius's doctor, who was being treated by Dr. Paul Nehans, to inject the Pope with methamphetamine. Max was sort of like Forrest Gump. Wherever you saw icons, there was a picture of Max Jacobson behind her shoulder. But so Max was that, and Max also was a serial killer. He killed Mark Shaw, the White House photographer, and Michael Baden, who you see on Fox, and he has the show HBO Autopsy, Michael Baden told us. Michael Baden was the New York City chief medical examiner, which we never knew. And Michael Baden examined Max Jacobson and decided that he had murdered Mark Shaw. And Michael himself did the autopsy for it. And he said he believed he was a serial killer.
Wow,
yeah,
unbelievable.
Baden was on to this guy all the way back in the 1970s. And one of the things that Baden told us is that even though he believed that Max Jacobson murdered Mark Shaw and was a killer, there's nothing he could do. I mean, he could say this was a homicide, but he couldn't charge him with murder. That could only come from the DA. But because Max was so well connected, the Attorney General of New York State, Louis Lefkowitz, stepped in on Max's behalf and said, leave this guy alone. So Max, very well connected through the Democrats.
That's definitely, it's good to have people with power as your friends, right? And especially if you're able to help them out, right, with certain things, right?
Absolutely. Max was locked in tight into the whole Kennedy clan, into the Rat Pack, into New York State politics as well. I mean, look, he was also treating Nelson Rockefeller, Vice President Rockefeller.
Wow. And then was him and Richard Nixon, right? Did he have anything to do with Nixon later on in life? Did Nixon get treated by him?
No. Go ahead, Rick.
He did get treated by Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon asked to be treated, but he would not treat him, first because he was an alcoholic, and second because he really hated Richard Nixon. So because he did that, Richard Nixon turned the DEA on Max Jacobson, and the reason Max Jacobson's downfall came was really because of Richard Nixon.
Yeah, see, when Richard Nixon was turned down, Nixon sent Spiro Agnew to New York because Nixon didn't want to go himself. So Spiro Agnew's mission in New York was to solicit Max Jacobson to treat the president, who was really suffering at this point. It was like 1972. And Jacobson said flat out, as Rick said, I'm not going to treat Nixon. He's an alcoholic. He actually called him an alcoholic and said, I'm not going to treat him. Well, Nixon was so mad that he began the war on drugs and the BNDD, the Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs. That became the DEA. And he took off after Max Jacobson. The New York Times did this unbelievable expose on Max Jacobson. Geraldo Rivera went after him. Don Imus went after him. And by 1973, 1974, Jacobson, who had already lost his license to practice medicine in New York State, was a pariah. And although he begged and appealed for a few years after that to have his license reinstated, he was turned down. For me, the big revelation was this. After the assassination of Kennedy, Eddie Fisher is the singer Eddie Fisher, very famous. I'm Yours, Oh My Papa, all those big songs of the 50s. Eddie Fisher is running around looking for a new supply. He'd broken with Max Jacobson. He needed his drugs. He's looking for a new supply. And he focuses on really shady characters in Hollywood. One of them introduces Eddie to Curtis LeMay. Curtis LeMay would be Richard Nixon's vice presidential candidate in 1968. We all know Curtis LeMay, right?
Okay.
He's at LeMay's house with his son, Todd. This is Eddie Fisher. And he says to LeMay, well, I got to run. I'm going to go meet Bobby Kennedy. Here's what Curtis LeMay says. Bobby Kennedy? Why are you going to meet Bobby Kennedy? He's going to be assassinated. He's going to be killed. So before Sirhan meets up with Bobby Kennedy in the lobby of that hotel in Los Angeles, here's Curtis LeMay saying he's going to be killed. Does this rewrite the history of the 1968 presidential election?
All right. The book is called The Dr. Feelgood Case Book. You can find it on Amazon, or you can go to the lifeandtimesofhollywood.com for more information on the book. Thanks, Rick Lertzman and Dr. William Burns, for stopping by the show. Again, the book is called The Dr. Feelgood Case Book. For more information, you can also go to TVHams.com, which is the official website of the Gentleman Grachowski Show. We'll be back with some more information More stuff after this. Don't go away. All right. Thanks for watching the Gentleman Grachowski Show. I hope you enjoyed the show today. I'd like to thank my guests, Rick Lertzman and Dr. William Burns, who are the authors of the new book, the Dr. Feelgood Case Book. And you can go to the Life and Times of Hollywood.com and find out some more information about them. As always, you can go to TVHams.com, which is the official website of the Gentleman Grachowski Show, TVHams.com. Everything about the show, TVHams.com. There's also links to our social media, which is Twitter, Facebook, and we also have a Instagram account. I like to smile on camera. And you should check out the pictures and like them. This is the Gentleman Grachowski Show. Hope you had a good night, and we'll talk to you next time.